Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Force Feed for this Monday, January 23rd. Today we will be discussing Guild Wars 2 confirmed for 2012, Twisted Metal goes gold, product placement in Blizzard's next MMO, and the Dead Space developer working on an online shooter. Let's jump into the news. It does look like we can expect Guild Wars 2 sometime later this year. Although no specific date was given, ArenaNet president Mike O'Brien confirmed a 2012 release date and gave their current plans for beta testing. In a blog post on arena.net, he wrote, "We recently finished our first closed beta test, and we're ready now to hold progressively larger events. In February, we'll invite select press to participate in beta testing, and in March and April, we'll aggressively ramp up the size of our beta test events so that many of you will have a chance to participate." And of course, this all leads up to the release of Guild Wars 2 later this year. So it does look like we're going to get our hands on the game before the end of the year, and this is very exciting news for me as I've been looking forward to Guild Wars 2 for a very long time. I do plan to do coverage of the game, specifically at release, if not before, during the beta. And then of course, if anyone who works at ArenaNet happens to be watching this, please feel free to send a key my way. Twisted Metal goes gold and is ready for release. Twisted Metal's producer, Chad Cox, stated today in a post on the PlayStation blog that the game is complete and ready for its February 14th release. He also announced in the post that they're going to be offering some cross-game promotion in the sense that if you buy the game, you will receive a voucher to unlock a Sweet Tooth skin in the upcoming Lightbox Interactive's sci-fi shooter Starhawk. So a little bit of cross-game promotion going on, but most importantly, it looks like Twisted Metal is on track for its February 14th release, so those of you looking forward to the title will not have to wait very much longer. It does look like we may be seeing some form of product placement in Blizzard's upcoming MMO. Codenamed Project Titan, there was a job posting for a franchise development producer for the game. In the job description, it states that they're looking for someone to work with major consumer brands to facilitate product placement and licensing within the world of Blizzard Entertainment's next-gen MMO to enhance the gameplay experience. Now, it has been rumored that Blizzard's next MMO is going to be an MMO FPS. In fact, there was talk of them possibly working with Bungie, the guys who work on Halo, specifically because Bungie is now under the Activision tree. I certainly think this is a possibility, and that if any game were to have product placement, an MMO FPS between Blizzard and Bungie would be a good place for it. Now, something to realize is that this type of product placement could work as a way for Blizzard to actually make money without having to charge a subscription. This is not set in stone, and I'm not confirming that this is going to be the case, but it's a possibility. If they happen to be having advertisers pay them for product placement within this massive game, as their next-gen MMO is very likely to be, then that could take the place of subscription fees. It's a possibility, and I'd like to know what you guys think of that. Would you be okay with product placement in the next-gen MMO? Let's just pretend it's an MMO FPS. If there happen to be billboard signs or stuff on the side of buildings or newspapers floating around or something like that, to take the place of subscription fees. Let me know what you think. Dead Space developer Visceral Games appears to be working on an online action shooter. There was a job posting for Visceral Games looking for a lead multiplayer designer. They specifically stated they're looking for someone to help create a thrilling online action shooter game. This is a unique opportunity to contribute to a bold new franchise, which is a cornerstone for a new EA game studio. Now, it is important to keep in mind that not too long ago, I reported on the fact that EA was looking to branch out with the Dead Space franchise and possibly look into creating an FPS, look into creating an online flight simulator game, and even looking into creating an action game. So it is quite possible that this is going to be the Dead Space FPS that they're thinking about working on. We'll have to see until we get more news further down the road. This is just looking at a job posting, but based on information we've gathered in the past, this is certainly a possibility. And then lastly, I will be wrapping things up with a question of the day. If you have a question that you would like answered at the end of the Force Feed, you can send me an email at theforcefeed@forcestrategygaming.com. Today's question comes from Liam, and he asks, "Hey Force, Gabe Newell, CEO and co-founder of Valve Corporation, has become quite famous of late for his, and presumably Valve's, stance on piracy. In an interview with a Cambridge University School paper, Mr. Newell said that the way to end piracy is to provide a service that's more complete than cracked software, and that restrictive DRM only encourages more piracy. He's also quoted to have said, "We think there is a fundamental misconception about piracy. Piracy is almost always a service problem and not a pricing problem." He said, "If a pirate offers a product anywhere in the world, 24/7, purchasable from the convenience of your personal computer, and the legal provider says the product is region locked, will come to your country 3 months after the US release, and can only be purchased at a brick and mortar store, then the pirate service is more valuable. Do you think that piracy is a service problem, and do you agree that the only way to stop piracy on a large scale is to scare consumers into paying under threat of prosecution? While I certainly don't think that threat of prosecution is the only way to stop piracy, I guess it's one way to do so, but I think a much better route would to do what Gabe Newell actually talks about. It's that to try to provide a better service. I mean, it is a major issue when you have a game coming out 3 months, 6 months, a year later in certain countries, just because they aren't able, they don't have the necessary means of getting it to those people. I think that online and downloadable service is certainly the way of the future when it comes to actually receiving titles. I think that the brick and mortar stores are kind of falling by the wayside, and just in general, more and more transactions and more things are happening online. And specifically with something like video games, it's very easy to just purchase it online and download it onto a computer. It's not something that you have to specifically go to a store for. Some people like to go to a store, some people prefer to have a physical copy, but I think in the future online only would be the way to go. So the current trend, or maybe not current so much, but the fact that piracy is such a major issue is partially due to that fact that people can quite easily get these games online. It's not an issue. They don't have to wait for the game to release in their country at all. Now, pricing is certainly an issue as well. There is a jackup in prices in other countries due to taxes and numerous other reasons, but I think that providing a better service overall is the best way to go. And if we can just have some sort of an online store, I mean, a la something like Steam, where people can get these games the second that they release and they don't have to wait an excess amount of time, I think that, along with competitive pricing and the addition of game demos, that would be a fantastic way to combat piracy. I mean, honestly, I think that if every company offered a 30-minute to an hour-long demo of their game, and then they also offered it online at the second that it was launched so that countries don't have to wait 3 months plus to get a particular title, and then lastly, if they made competitive pricing so that one country isn't paying so much more than the next, specifically countries that have a much lower average income than, say, we do here in the US, I think those three things combined would almost kill out piracy. I mean, that solves most of the major issues. Give people the ability to try out your game, price it fairly, and then also make it available for everybody across the board at the same time. I think that if the gaming industry adopted those three things, that it would really help and cut back in online piracy. I do feel like that solves most of the issues and resolves most of the reasons that people decide to pirate games. Alright guys, that is going to do it for this episode of the Force Feed. As always, I thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned tomorrow for another episode, keeping you up to date on all the most recent gaming news and announcements. Once again, this has been Force, and you've just been Force Fed. Oh, and people working at ArenaNet, I wasn't kidding about the beta key. Give me one.